Hey, Dan Biegelman here. This video is on the Ionian Mode. It's the first in a series of 7 videos on the modes based upon the major diatonic scale. In this video, as well as the following 6 videos, I'll talk about each mode in terms of its chemistry or sequence of steps. In other words, what is it that make this mode sound like it does and different than the other ones. I'll also talk about the correct type of chord or chords you can apply the mode to, and discuss ideas for soloing, improvising, even ideas for composing using the modes for creating signature type lines. And lastly, I'll talk about connecting the modes with the correct pentatonic and blues scales, because when you do that, you'll open up a lot more of a variety of options for you for your playing, soloing, improvising, just creating really nice lines. Okay, on to the Ionian Mode. What gives the Ionian Mode its own unique sound? Every scale, every mode is comprised of a series of steps. In other words, a chemistry or formula of the particular scale. The formula or the sequence of steps for the Ionian Mode is whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. What does that mean? When I hit my first note, my root note, the next note will be a whole step higher, then a whole step higher, then a half step, and then 3 more whole steps and a half step, and then I'll reach my octave and the scale is completed. I'll demonstrate using a C Ionian mode on string 2 only. In other words, I'm going to play the scale horizontally on one string, and the reason for that is so you can clearly see the sequence of steps in terms of whether I hit a whole step, which is equivalent to 2 frets, or a half step, which is equivalent to 1 fret. So again, the sequence is whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. And here's a C Ionian mode on string 2. Starting on string 2, fret 1, there's my C note, and after the first note, there's my starting point, my root, whole step higher, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step, and it sounds like this. And very clearly you can hear do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. So the Ionian mode, the first mode, is actually the major scale. That's a very interesting thing. Okay, Ionian mode, major scale. And if you watch video 6 in this series, where I talk about the Aeolian mode is the natural minor scale. And if you compare the Ionian mode 1 to the Aeolian mode 6, it gets into that, using that phrase relative major minor, where a major scale or an Ionian mode and the natural minor scale, the Aeolian mode, are the kind of 2 sides of the same coin. They share the same notes. I'll get into that more later in this video, and also in video 6. So the Ionian mode is the same as a major scale. You want to play a C Ionian mode, play C major scale. Okay, very, very simple. There are many patterns for scales and modes all across the fingerboard, but this one I'm going to show you here is one of the ones I like to use, and I think it's a very user-friendly one. And also because this one, it starts, the lowest note is the key note, the root note here. I'll use the key of C as an example. Okay, to play this pattern for the key of C, I'm going to be in position 9. Now the 9th position would cover frets 9 through 12, thinking of finger to a fret, but on strings 6, 5, and 1, I have to pull my first finger to the left 1 fret to cover fret 8. But the fact that I'm going to be using fret 8, don't think you're in position 8, because if you are thinking that way, if your hand is in the 8th position, all these other fingers are going to be out of alignment. So set your fingers up in position 9, and then on those 3 strings, 6, 5, and 1, just pull your first finger, your index finger, back to the left 1 fret. So these fingers and your thumb kind of lock you into this area, and then your first finger will do this when it needs to access the 8th or the 9th fret. Okay, here's C Ionian mode in the 9th position. And you can clearly hear it. There it goes. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. And the nice, as I said, the nice thing about this pattern is the lowest note is the root note, C, right there. So you can, you know, access any Ionian mode or major scale you want. You want it to be G, start on G, you know, fret 3. But wherever you are, remember that first note is in 2-fret space. So if you, again, if I wanted to use the key of G as an example, even though G is the 3rd fret, I'm actually going to be in position 4. But then pull my first finger to the left 1 fret, and I have that open space between these first 2 fingers. Okay, the pattern I just showed you has 2 octaves and part of the 3rd octave. Here's the 1st octave, 2nd octave, and then 3rd octave. So I have 2 full octaves and then 3 notes of the 7 notes for the 2nd octave. Okay, and the range of the scale is the root note of the lowest note, and the top note is the third tone in the scale, 1, 2. Right, so that's my range of the scale. And again, a very, very nice pattern to use because it really sits nicely in your hands, and starting and ending on the root note, you can clearly hear the Ionian mode, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Some people might think that the Ionian mode is somewhat of a boring scale to use in terms of for soloing and improvising, you know, but that's actually very untrue. What you do with it is really what matters. Okay, so as an example, the pattern I just showed you, right? C Ionian mode, C major scale. If you just played it in order of the notes like that laid out, obviously it's going to sound like do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, and it's not going to be very interesting. But if you just mix the notes up in different orders, you can come up with an infinite amount of ideas. And the Ionian mode can be used in different contexts. For example, here in a softer, jazzier type of context, I'll just play a line, I'll mix up these notes, and I'll get something like this. Okay, it's kind of a pretty sounding line, and everything I played came right out of that scale pattern I had showed you. Like I said, it's just mixing up the notes in different orders, and you can really create some interesting lines. A little later in this video, I'll show you how to use the Ionian mode more in a rock context, so it's not limited to just soft, pretty, jazzier type applications. Here's another pattern for the Ionian mode, and this pattern I think is a little bit more applicable for rock music, or in a rock type setting, rock pop music, where the first pattern I showed you I think sits better in a jazzier type setting. Not to discount though that you can use any pattern in any type of music, but it's a matter of how like the fingers lay out and what just seems to like really sit nicely in your hands for the particular genre that you're playing in. Okay, here's pattern number 2. I'll use the key of E to demonstrate. I'm going to play an E Ionian mode. In this pattern, the root note will be on string 6, but I'll be using my 4th finger, not my 1st finger, as in the first pattern. And I'll be in position 9, but there's one note that will have to be played outside that position. Position 9 covers frets 9 through 12, but there's one note, the 7th degree, which is the D sharp, that has to be played either to the 8th fret on string 3 or the 13th fret on string 4. I'll show you both patterns. Here's E Ionian mode, first way. You'll notice on string 4 I stretched my pinky out 1 fret because I needed to get that D sharp note. If I didn't stretch, I'd have a D natural, and that would not be the Ionian mode. If I play this note on string 4 with my pinky stretched out, which is D sharp, there's also a D sharp on string 3 if I go back 1 fret to the 8th fret. So here's the other option for fingering. Okay, so in that particular pattern, the 7th degree of the scale, the D sharp, you can get it by stretching your pinky to the right 1 fret, or stretching your first finger to the left 1 fret on string 3. Okay, either or will work. Now, what's really, really nice, as I mentioned, how this particular pattern really sits well in a rock type setting, and rock, blues, whatever the case may be. I'm sure you all know this E chord, or major chord, and I'm using in the 7th fret. It's an E major chord, and this chord generated from like the open A chord, right? And if I just bar that up, A sharp, B flat, B, C, C sharp, D, all the way up to E. Okay, I have if I look at the notes I'm playing, I have a root note, I have a 5th, I have a root note again, and a 3rd. Root, 5, root, 3, and makes up my major triad. If I just play the notes that I'm pressing with or holding with my 3rd finger, I have an E major chord in the 2nd inversion, the 5th, the root, and the 3rd, 5, 1, 3. Now what's interesting about this, watch this, E major chord, and the low note is the E or the root note. If I switch my 3rd finger with my 1st finger, same chord, just using a different finger, but now if I put my 3rd finger on string 5, now I have an octave lower as a 3rd, an octave lower than on string 2. So this is an E chord with a 3rd in the bass. The 3rd tone in the scale is my low note. E chord with the E in the bass. E chord with the 3rd in the bass. And the reason I brought this up is because you can clearly see that scale I just showed you, that Ionian mode pattern. It's right here. So you can see a lot of things, you've probably heard things like this, Hendrix type stuff. Right? It just sits right here. So it's a really nice connection there. If you're playing in the key of E, E major of course, and you play your chord this way with your 3rd in the bass, you have all these things you can have right there from the Ionian mode kind of jumping out at you. Okay? Also, I mentioned about connecting the mode to the correct pentatonic scale and the correct blues scale. Now, there are 2 types of pentatonic scales, major and minor, and there are 2 types of blues scales, major and minor, and obviously you have to use the correct one. The Ionian mode is a major sounding mode because it has a major 3rd. Remember, a chord, a major chord, your basic major triad, has the 1st, 3rd, and 5th degrees of the scale. So if I play the 1st note, the 3rd note, and the 5th note, there's an E major chord, which shows that the Ionian mode is a major sounding mode. Okay, and because of that, it will connect with a major pentatonic and a major blues scale. Here's an E major pentatonic scale in the same position. Right, and here's an E major blues scale. The pentatonic scale, remember, is a 5-tone scale. The major blues scale is a 6-tone scale. It's a major pentatonic with a flat 3rd added in, which acts as a passing tone to the natural 3rd. Root, 2nd, flat 3, natural 3. And there is it again. Okay, here's all 3 scales together. E Ionian mode, or E major scale. E major pentatonic scale. E major blues scale. You can see so many similarities, or so many notes are in both of these scales. All of the notes in the major pentatonic scale are in the Ionian mode. 5 of the 6 notes in the blues scale are in the Ionian mode. It's that flat 3rd, this note here, which acts as that, again, as that passing tone between the 2nd and the 3rd. If you hung on that note for a while against an E major chord, it would sort of clash a little bit, because this is a minor 3rd, which would turn a chord into a minor chord, but as a passing tone. you know, it works as again, it passes through from the second to the third. It makes a little bridge between those two notes. The difference between the pentatonic scale and the Ionian mode is this. If I look at the pentatonic scale, the degrees from the Ionian mode, in other words, the Ionian mode, being a major scale, has 7 tones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? The pentatonic scale is 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. So a pentatonic scale is like an Ionian mode or a major scale, leaving out the 4th and the 7th degree. The 4th degree is the A note from the key of E. So the pentatonic scale doesn't have that and doesn't have the 7th. The reason I mention this is now, like any of the modes, when you mix modes with the pentatonic scale, it's those 2 notes that are in the mode that are not in the pentatonic scale that really give the mode its unique characteristic sound and really, you know, just distinguish it from the straight up pentatonic scales. Pentatonic scale. Right? And it sounds good as well. There's the 4th. Right? It kind of makes it a little bit prettier sounding. So the Ionian mode, again, is like the pentatonic scale, but adding those 2 extra notes in there, which really kind of gives a different color or a different, you know, flavor to the mode. So you can, again, just reviewing this again real quick, in any position, if I lay my hands out like this, I can, or let's say starting with a chord, like here's a C chord. Switch that up to with the 3rd and the bass, I have this, and then right here I have C Ionian mode, I have C pentatonic scale, C major pentatonic, and C major blues scale. And it's a pretty chord, it's a very pretty sounding chord when you play a major chord with the 3rd and the bass. Chord with the root in the bass, chord with a 3rd in the bass. Okay, so a lot to see here in terms of the mode and how it connects to the chord and also connects with the correct pentatonic and blues scales. I showed you earlier in the video just creating a jazzier type of a line from the Ionian mode in that first pattern that I showed you. But I did say that you can use the Ionian mode for soloing in more of like a rock context. Now, being that the Ionian mode is a major sounding mode, it's not going to be good for any kind of heavy music. You're not going to use it in Iron Maiden or you know, Metallica, things like that. Unless, of course, the song is in a major key, like a softer type of a tune. But a good use of the Ionian mode in a soloing situation is the song Blue Sky by the Allman Brothers Band. I imagine most people out there are familiar with the Allman Brothers Band. And a lot of their tunes were in major keys and kind of happier sounding, if you will, use that expression, like happy sounding, okay? The solo, these extended guitar solos like in Blue Sky, really make use of the Ionian mode very nicely. The solo section of Blue Sky is just 2 chords, E and A. E. You know, just a bar of E and a bar of A, back and forth. And the solo is completely built on the Ionian mode in the key of E. Here's a bit of the guitar solo from Blue Sky. And on and on and on. So everything I played is in the E Ionian mode, and whenever I was in the 9th position here, coming off of that pattern, of course, some string bending. Sometimes I would bend this second degree here to the major third, and sometimes actually to the fourth, which would be bending it 1.5 steps. But as you can see, a really nice example of using the Ionian mode in a rock or a softer rock type setting is the Ionian mode. Here's another example of using the Ionian mode to create a signature iconic guitar riff. Staying with the band the Allman Brothers, the song Ramblin' Man, I imagine everybody on the planet, or almost, has heard this tune. That's the intro to Ramblin' Man. It's in the key of G, and it uses that second pattern I showed you, G Ionian mode. So it has a very singing quality to it. The Ionian mode in a major key, yes, it really just sings, like kind of a very happy kind of a sound to it. So Ionian mode, lots of uses for it. It's not as dull as you may think. The Allman Brothers Band made good use of the Ionian mode to create harmony guitar lines when the song is in a major key. I'll show you how this works. The second pattern for the Ionian mode I showed you, using E as an example, E Ionian mode in position 9. If I play that pattern, I see that there are 3 root notes and there are 3 E notes. The 6th string first finger, the 3rd string first finger, and the 1st string pinky. Okay? If I start on that center root note, string 3, finger 1, if I just play a simple little line, so I just moved up 4 notes in the scale, 1, 2, 3, came back to the 7th and returned to the root. Okay? If I want to harmonize to that, I can do what's called 1-3 harmony, because I'm going to harmonize from the 3rd note of the scale. Go to the 3rd note and start here, and I'm going to just follow the same sequence. In other words, I went up 4 notes from the first line, 1, 2, 3, 4, turned around, back to where I started from, 1 note below that, and return. And now I'll just start on the 3rd note in the scale, and I'll mimic that same movement. 4 notes up, return, 1 lower, and then back. So guitar 1, guitar 2. And when you put that together, it's going to sound like this. So that's called 1-3 harmony, because there's the root note and then the 3rd. Remember, a major chord has 1, 3, and 5. So you can have 1-3 harmony, which I just showed you, and I'll show you 1-5 harmony. Again, guitar 1 plays the same thing. And now instead of guitar 2 playing the 3rd note, I'm going to play the 5th note, start on the 5th note, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and again I'm going to follow that same sequence. Go up 4 notes, come back 1 below where I started from, and back. So guitar 2 would be guitar 1, guitar 2. And if I put that together, it's going to sound like this. So that's 1-5 harmony. So you can have 1-3 harmony, 1-5 harmony. And again, this is all just coming out of the Ionian mode. You can also have 3-5 harmony, which is really the same as 1-3 harmony, just superimposed up a little bit. So the main thing to consider is, if you want to harmonize 1-3 harmony, whatever guitar 1 plays, guitar 2 starts 2 notes higher in that same scale and then mimics the same zigzagging pattern in the scale. Whatever guitar 1 plays, you play 2 notes ahead of it. And if you want 1-5 harmony, it's 4 notes above. Guitar 1 plays this, and guitar 2 goes 4 notes in the scale above it, and then whichever zigzag pattern guitar 1 plays, guitar 2 would play that. So 1-3 harmony and 1-5 harmony based on the Ionian mode, and that will work great for major chords. Again, the Allman Brothers Band being a good example of making use of that. Now also, if you watch my video number 6 on the Aeolian mode, the same concept can apply in a minor situation. Bands like Iron Maiden with 2 guitar players, but more in a rock metal context, and a lot of songs are in minor keys. The 6th mode, the Aeolian mode, is the natural minor scale, and the exact same idea applies. 1-3 harmony, 1-5 harmony. And again, the relationship of these 2 modes, the Ionian mode and the Aeolian mode, is relative major minor. That concept, relative major minor, 2 sides of the same coin. The Ionian mode is the same as a major scale. The Aeolian mode is the same as a natural minor scale. So if I play a C scale, I have all natural notes: C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. If I play an A natural minor scale, I have all natural notes: A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. So because of that concept, think of it as like 2 sides of the same coin. Major scale or Ionian mode here, Aeolian mode or natural minor scale here, the exact same notes. The only difference is, if you're looking at it from the perspective of the Ionian mode, you would have the pattern whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half from the first note. And if you flipped it over to the Aeolian mode, you would have the pattern for the Aeolian mode. So check out video number 6 on the Aeolian mode for the same concept applied with dual guitar harmony in a minor mode context. Now I'll just play a little bit to demonstrate using the Ionian mode mixed with the major pentatonic and the major blues scales. I'll use the key of E to demonstrate. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please leave any questions or comments in the comments section below. I'm Dan Beagleman, and that's the Ionian mode. Have a nice day.